The internet can lead you to a dark place you could never imagine. A fake identity, an obsession, and a brutal murder. What happened in Davis Creek was much more than just a love triangle. On the morning of September 15th, 2012, it seemed like a regular day in the quiet, little-known town of Davis Creek, Pennsylvania. Workers at the factory along the town's main road were starting their day as usual. But that routine morning turned into a nightmare when factory worker Brian Smith was found shot in the head, dead inside his car. Brian, a young college student full of life, was known as a quiet, hard-working person by those around him. Nobody could have imagined that Brian had fallen victim to a crime of passion. But this case was far more complex than it appeared, deeply rooted in the dark corners of the internet, where obsession and identity fraud were at play. Jessie Walker, an 18-year-old introverted girl, was a high school student in Pennsylvania. She wasn't very successful in her social life, and the distance between her and her friends was growing. But Jessie had a place where she felt free: the internet. Online games and chat rooms were her escape from the real world. Jessie met a young soldier named Parker on a gaming site. Parker, 21 years old, claimed to be stationed in Iraq and said he didn't talk to his family often. He was confident, handsome, and Jessie formed a deep connection with him online. They shared dreams, and Jessie hoped to meet Parker in person someday. But Jessie had no idea that Parker was actually Tom Richardson, a 46-year-old married man with 2 children. Tom had worked in the same factory for years and was bored with his monotonous life. His marriage was on the brink of collapse, and the excitement in his relationship with his wife had long since vanished. After discovering online chat rooms, Tom decided to create a second life for himself. Posing as a young soldier, Tom flirted with girls like Jessie to add a bit of excitement to his life. For months, Jessie wrote letters to Parker, sent him gifts, and held on to the hope that one day they would meet in person. But Tom's obsessive feelings for the young girl were growing out of control. One day, Jessie received a letter from a woman named Cindy Richardson. The letter shattered Jessie's world. Cindy revealed that her husband was the one pretending to be Parker, and that Jessie had been communicating with a 46-year-old married man all along. Jessie was in shock. Parker, Tom, had always seemed honest to her. How could he have deceived her like this? Jessie logged into the chat room to confront Parker. At first, Tom tried to deny everything, but eventually he had no choice but to confess the truth. It was a huge blow for Jessie, but things only got more complicated from there. Jessie couldn't completely cut ties with Tom. Conflicted and confused, Jessie continued to communicate with him despite his betrayal. But then someone new entered Jessie's life: Brian Smith. Brian, one of Tom's co-workers at the factory, was a 22-year-old college student working part-time to pay for his tuition. While Tom and Brian worked the same shifts, they weren't particularly close. One day, Tom mentioned Jessie to Brian, explaining that she was an 18-year-old girl he had been talking to online. Brian was surprised by the story, but didn't think much of it at first. Later, however, Brian decided to reach out to Jessie online to verify what Tom had told him. As Brian and Jessie began talking, a deep connection formed between them. Their conversations quickly developed into a youthful romance. But Jessie's obsession with Tom wasn't entirely over. She continued to manipulate Tom, telling him that she still wanted to talk to Parker and keeping Tom's interest alive. What Tom didn't know, though, was that Jessie was also involved in a romantic relationship with Brian. When Tom discovered Jessie's closeness with Brian, it triggered a wave of jealousy and anger. Feeling threatened by the young girl's growing attachment to someone else, Tom began to spiral out of control. He started harassing Brian at work, sending him threatening messages and repeatedly warning him to stay away from Jesse. But Brian didn't take the threats seriously. On the night of September 14th, Brian finished his shift and got into his car, unaware that it would be the last time anyone would see him alive. Ambushed, Brian was shot and killed in his car. There were no signs of a struggle. The attack had been swift and calculated. His body was found by his family the following morning. The shattered windows of the car indicated that the murder had been carried out with cold precision. The Davis Creek Police Department immediately responded to the murder scene. Detective Mark Hansen initially believed that the crime had been committed by someone with professional experience. There were no signs of struggle on the body, and the windows had been smashed from the inside. However, Brian's phone was found in his pocket, containing text conversations with both Jesse and Tom. This discovery led the police to uncover a love triangle and a complicated web of online relationships. They first questioned Brian's co-workers. Factory workers confirmed that Tom had been having issues with Brian over Jesse. Brian had been threatened multiple times by Tom, who saw their relationship as a threat to his control over Jesse. Detective Hansen and his team quickly turned their focus to Tom Richardson. Detectives raided Tom's house, where they found threatening text messages Tom had sent to Brian, along with gifts Jesse had given to Tom. These clues provided a breakthrough in the murder investigation. But the police were in for an even more shocking revelation. Jesse was not who she appeared to be. In reality, the person posing as Jesse was Karen Walker, Jesse's own mother. Karen had used her daughter's photos to pose as a young girl and engage in online relationships with men. On the day of Brian's murder, Tom had left work, ambushed Brian by his car, and shot him. Tom attempted to go into hiding afterward, but the police quickly tracked him down and arrested him. Although Tom initially denied killing Brian, digital evidence and his obsessive relationship with Jesse revealed that the crime had been premeditated. During his trial, Tom admitted that his emotional breakdown had been caused by his unhealthy obsession with Jesse. However, this admission did not absolve him of responsibility. The murder had been fueled by jealousy and an online obsession that spiraled out of control. In 2013, Tom Richardson was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. The digital messages exchanged between Tom and Jesse, along with Tom's threatening behavior, were key pieces of evidence proving that the crime had been premeditated. Karen Walker was also charged with online identity fraud and exploitation. After the truth about Jesse's real identity came to light, it was revealed that Karen had been using her daughter's photos to create the Jesse persona, posing as a young girl to engage in flirtatious conversations with men online. Although Karen claimed that Jesse had no knowledge of these actions, her manipulative behavior did not go unpunished. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Ultimately, the crimes committed by Tom Richardson and Karen Walker left a permanent scar on the small town of Davis Creek. Brian Smith's death was a tragic result of online obsession and identity fraud, exposing the dangerous side of the internet once again. Tom will spend the rest of his life behind bars, and Karen Walker will continue to bear the weight of the lives she destroyed.